you being intimidated, or you having your feelings hurt, or you being angry because they're treating me a certain way. Whatever it is, has no place in this call. If you're going to make money, if the client's going to be fully served, you just have to be a grown-up. And you got to be willing to push past their nonsense. And oftentimes is what their smokescreen objections are.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your host, Nate and Brian, hanging out with you and looking forward to another great episode. We are bringing back fan favorite returning guest, Jamie Mellinger. That's right. We're bringing the man, the myth, the legend back on the show. We're going to be talking about objections. We're going to be talking about his growth. We're going to be talking about all good things sales related. It's going to be a great episode, and we are looking forward to talking with our friend again. But before we get into that, we're going to spend just a minute or two with a little bit of an introduction for you. And we're going to start off with a quote from Mr. Brian.
People get so caught up with the fact that they have limits that they rarely exert the effort required to get anywhere close to them. James Clear.
Okay, I like it. That's not a familiar quote to me, nor is it a familiar author, but appreciate the concept and the mind frame there.
Yeah, James Clear wrote the absolutely ridiculous book, Atomic Habits. I had just finished Nobody's Coming to Save You by Scott Mann, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. It's a freaking awesome book. Such a good leadership, life in general book by Scott Mann. And I had finished it. He's coming on the show here very soon. But I was reading, I finished it, and then I just kind of scrolled down my Audible, and I was like going to go get another book and get started. And I realized that Atomic Habits, the last time I had read it, I had like 48 minutes or an hour, 48 minutes or something left. And I was like, oh, I'll just finish that again, And if you haven't read Atomic Habits, make sure you jump on that. And I'm in the shower, and that part played. And, I take my phone in the shower. I set it up on the window ledge. We have like a little half window above our shower. And that quote, that part went through. He's like, and he just kind of said it randomly through the book. And I was just like, I'm like washing my hair. It's like shampoo all over my face. I'm like, oh, I'm like, get it off, like grab the phone, because sometimes I'll just screenshot. So I remember that place, but I wanted to hear the quote again as much as I wanted to save it and, pin it and put it in my notebook for an episode. But I just myself needed to hear it for things that I'm doing right now where I feel like I'm not Superman, like what Spider-Man's aunt said to him. You're not Superman, Peter. And it's like, yeah, I can't do everything. So in this case, I'm just not going to do anything. It's a very comfortable place to end up. And it hit me personally very hard where it's like, oh, so I backed it up 30 seconds and I listened to that part again. And I just paused it for a sec, finished washing my hair, and then I backed it up again and listened to it again. By this time, my phone screen's just soaked, and any button I try to press, it just goes haywire, And then I got out of the shower and I jotted it down in the notepad, and I said, we'll use this on an upcoming episode soon. But I really did give it some thought, which I try to do now with quotes that I hear that are impactful or are going to make the show. I'm like, no, I need to ponder this and how I can apply this to my life. And this quote hit me in just several different ways where it's like, look, I can't be perfect and do everything. So why do anything? I'm doing enough. And it made me point out a few places in my life that I need to take more action and not worry about whether I'm at my limit. Just get to work. And let's find out what the limits are of what we can accomplish. We have no idea what the limits are of what we can accomplish. We have no idea in any capacity. So whether it's the husband, the father I am, the host to you being the co-host on this amazing show.
Thanks, Brian.
To mentor to the people that I'm mentoring, whatever it is. We've not scratched the surface on our own limits, but the fact that we know we have them is enough to not do anything oftentimes. And I just don't want to live in that world anymore, man.
I appreciate that, Brian. And it's something that is easy to, there's a reason it's called the comfort zone. It's just easy to exist there. And it's easy to also convince yourself that you are pressing your limits, I think, in many ways, because you get tired, right?
Yeah, you want to find out where you're not. Well, for a lot of the people listening and like you're working out and stuff, it's like, yeah, you're kicking butt in the gym. But if you want to find out if you're really kicking butt, next time we're at a convention, meet me at the gym. Like, let's work out together, right? You know what I'm saying? And that's just, well, that's me to you. But what do? Every other Wednesday, I go, Tommy Mello and I spend 2 hours together at his house. And usually we walk for our meeting. And I push for 10,000 steps a day. Now, I was never a person who counted steps or cared about this kind of thing. But I sit all day, most of the day now, right? I'm in a desk, in a chair. And so I figured, let me just count and see how many steps I actually get throughout the course of a day. It's like 1,300. And I'm like, well, what does my life look like? Not today or next month, but I'm 45 as this records. When I'm 25 years from now, when I'm 70, what does my life look like if I stay hitting 1,300 steps a day? Or if I spend less time in a chair and hit 10,000 steps a day, what is my life? Is my life different in 10, 15 years, 20, 25, whatever, however long I live? I have no idea. Yeah, it's probably pretty different, right? And what I come to find out is that just steps. I'm not talking about the gym. I'm still doing that. I'm not talking about anything else. Just steps. And I'm like, yeah, my life's already different from doing this just for several months. Like I hit my sets at the gym and then I walk around the perimeter of the gym and then back to what I was working with. I have to get 2,000 steps before I leave the gym in the morning. Otherwise, I won't hit 10,000. Like I know my count. And then I go walk with Tommy. This dude is moving at like 2.5 times the speed I walk at, which is great. Like I'm getting a shin splint. My heel hurts. I'm like, oh my gosh, bro. I think we do like 6,000 steps on the walk, or maybe it was 8,000 steps on the walk that we do every other Wednesday. But he's talking about how he's running his business. He's talking about what he's doing in the gym. He's talking about how he's investing. He's talking about how he's investing in Bree, his fiance. He's talking about the amount of money he's paying coaches in all these different areas of his life, how much he's spending. And I'm always fascinated by wealthy guys' wealth, right? But not nearly as fascinated as I am by the fact that he probably spends more. He definitely spends more in a year than I make on coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, like you go into the gym with me and find out how hard you're really working. You're not going to feel like you work that hard. I go talk to him about what he's doing and I don't feel like I'm working that hard. So you just go get around somebody, right? And this is why your reference group is so crucial, so important. Because now what do I do on Thursday morning? I step my game up and I'm driving home. Every time I leave there, I call my wife. I talk to Amelia the whole way home. I'm walking up the driveway on the phone with her. I open the door. I see her. I hang up. I'm just like, my head's spinning, right? I'm like, we got to do this. We got to do that. I'm not doing enough. I don't know what kind of role model I am for this family. I don't know what kind of leader I am at work. Like, I'm lagging. I'm falling behind, man. I'm not doing anything. And it's all based on that reference group. But he is someone who really shakes me up and makes me realize, like, I'm not testing my limits. They're all self-imposed limits where I just feel like I'm just doing too much. I'm so busy. It's like, okay, maybe I'm too busy. Why aren't I delegating more? Why am I not finding more people to do the little, like the tedious things that I'm not good at anyway and should not be doing? Use the Dan Martell buy back your time philosophy of like, Figure out what your actual hourly rate is, what you get paid per hour. And if what you're doing is something that somebody could do for half that or less, you shouldn't be doing it. It's like, oh, life changed. I got my virtual assistant, my part-time assistant who actually lives in Pennsylvania, coincidentally. And she takes a lot of those little tedious things off my list. I got to pay her, but I sure ain't paying her my hourly rate, right? So let's test some limits. Let's, for real, waste no day. Let's waste no day. Let's test some limits. Let's push ourselves a bit.
Great place to start here on a Monday morning, Brian, or whenever you're choosing to listen to this. Thank you for that motivation. And a little bit more motivation for our listeners, and perhaps even for the host of this podcast, is a review. So, Brian, who are we looking to spotlight today?
Listen. You need to listen. 5 stars. Do not do yourself the disservice of scrolling past this podcast. If you work for a business in the trades, this podcast is for you. I started as a dispatcher and now am the operations manager of my company. And let me tell you, this content is gold. I gain perspective on what my techs are living day to day. I learn to communicate more effectively, and I leave each episode feeling motivated. This information is so valuable, and I appreciate Nate and Brian for gifting it to us weekly. Heather S., Wisconsin.
Heather. All right. Appreciate that, Heather. That's awesome.
Yeah. We got another woman listens to the show. That's like her and Coral Whale.
Oh, Amy probably listens, right?
Amy
Contrail.
Oh yeah. What am I talking about? She's been on the show.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. So
Jamie,
Amy,
Coral, and Heather.
I haven't talked about her saying her name on the show, but my friend Jamie in Florida. Is it Florida? Is she in Florida? Spiteful Ticks friend who did the review a few weeks ago. Yeah, there's like that. Of the dozens and dozens and dozens of people listening, about a half dozen of them are of the fairer sex.
All right. Yeah. Well, we appreciate that. And we appreciate you, Heather, for leaving the review.
Dude, we're going to get to double-digit women here before we, you know what I'm saying? Before this thing's all said and done. We could get to 10 women listening to the Waste No Day podcast.
All right. Challenge is laid down. Well, thank you, Heather, for taking the time to do that. And also, we celebrate with you and your growth in the company. That's really cool that you've experienced that. And I'm sure that your team is blessed if you are using this content to make them better. And they should count themselves fortunate to have a leader such as you who's pushing them in that direction. Well, all of you should count yourself fortunate that you will have the opportunity to listen to Mr. Jamie Mellinger come back on the show. And it's time to put him in your passenger seat. Our guest today is Jamie Mellinger. He is an electrician based out of my location in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He's been in the trades for well over a decade at this point. And he has been serving at our location in Lancaster, primarily working as a service and maintenance electrician. He has a specialty in the maintenance side of things. And he is very gifted in his ability to communicate. He's one of the most process-driven salespeople that I know. He's been on the show a number of times, and we're super excited to invite him back on. And it's going to be a great show today. Welcome back, Jamie.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Thank you for joining us, my man. Every time there's certain people that are coming on the show, and there's anytime Nate and I are doing a show, we both kind of sigh. We exhale. Oh, can I do a show tonight? I'm climbing up my stairs at this time of the year, 5:30 p.m. Nate's climbing down his stairs at 8:30 p.m. his time. It's a chaotic time in both of our households after a work day, and we're just kind of like, we gotta get up there, gotta get down there, get on the show. There are certain people we know are coming on the show. It helps when it's your fourth time on the show, that we know we are not going to work very hard tonight. Right, Nate?
I'm counting on it, Jamie.
Jamie Mellinger is one of those people where it's just like, we kind of steer the ship a little bit. Never are we going to pick up a row and actually get to work, though. Right, my man?
It's one of those things when we fall into, old habits die hard, and we've spent a lot of time together, working together over the years. And yeah, it just kind of feels natural. So
natural to let you do all the work. Absolutely.
well, of course.
It's just like me being in management in Lancaster again, buddy.
Oh, I remember. It's all
Jamie
right.
out there running the calls, me enjoying the air conditioning. Love it.
Yeah, it was a pretty sweet gig, I think, for both of us. It worked out.
Worked out for both of us.
Well, Jamie, we're thrilled to have you back on, and we want to introduce you to perhaps some of our new listeners who have never heard you before. If you haven't heard Jamie's story, he's been on a couple times before, including April 5 of 2021, May 15, and May 22nd of 2023. So it's been a little bit since you've been on. We're excited to hear from you again and what's going on. But as we like to do with our guests, why don't you introduce us to the Jamie Mellinger story?
Yeah, we can go as deep and long into that. People love to talk about themselves, so it's of course something that's as fun as we can get. But I started out in the trades right out of high school. One of those that I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and family had been in the trades, so I got an opportunity to start at an electrical company. Man, yeah, it was, looking back at it, it's kind of crazy at how it all started. Good friend of the family had an electrical company and was able to start doing commercial industrial. At that point, we got slow, got a chance to go back and work towards my degree for electrical engineering. Realized pretty quickly that was not what I wanted to do with my life. So my wife and I, at that point, girlfriend, we wanted to get married, and I needed a job. My dad worked for a company in the heating and air conditioning side, worked for 1 hour. And they were willing to interview myself and my brother at the same time. Hired him on the spot for the install position for installing new HVAC systems. And it took them about 2 weeks to decide that it was okay to hire me. Back at that point,
Something they still hold against us, I believe.
maybe a little bit. At that point, we were having to take personality tests to get hired for a service role. So it took a little bit till I was able to get the test, whole 9 yards, and sat down. I think at that point I sat down with Scott and Matt at that point, and they were kind of like, listen, we don't have a position for you in the electrical side. You can either start now in the 1 hour, and when something opens up, we'll move you over, or we'll call you. I was like, well, get my foot in the door. Like, I see the opportunity, at the company there to increase my income for growth and a good opportunity. And so I was like, yeah, I'll get started. Got started there, doing duct cleanings. So me and one of the other younger guys, we did that. About 3 months in, one of the electricians decided that he needed to move to Florida. And so I was tossed into a truck at that point, Monday morning, with what I would say is very little experience in terms of the trades. I had done, 2 years of experience in commercial industrial, but I'd never priced anything. I'd never worked with a client. Yeah, any of that type of stuff.
So you had electrical experience. You didn't have necessarily communication presentation experience.
No, and honestly, even the electrical experience that I had, it was mostly solar and lighting retrofits. So the guys that do know electrical, or that are listening to this that do electrical, it is obviously not very hard to do those things. Physically, yes, of course. But in terms of technical and troubleshooting, I had never really done any work in residential homes. I could do switches, outlets, and some lighting. But at that point, I can't even say that I had my head wrapped around three-way switches or things like that. And so I was tossed into a truck and basically told, hey, give us a call if you need. We'll walk you through it over the phone. So first 2 years were pretty struggle bus in terms of, trying to get my feet off the ground with learning the electric, and then the communication with clients, pricing, the whole sales process. At that point, the owner of the company was directly, managing the electrical side. And I thought it was the absolute best thing ever. We absolutely loved it. Knew Brian at least a little bit at that point as a plumber. Had started, I guess, around that time, starting that you took over the plumbing, I believe, Brian, in Lancaster.
2013, I think, end of 2013.
Yeah. So I guess at that point, then you were already managing when I got hired on. And so I had kind of, like, looking back at it, it's kind of funny to see how wrong I was, and how, until you really get to know somebody, you don't really know them. But Brian and I talk about this and kind of joke about it all the time. But when the owner at that point kind of decided to kind of take a step back in terms of the day-to-day running the electrical side, Brian and Aaron were taking over the Mister Sparky. And I had sworn that I would never work for Brian. Like, just from talking and hearing the guys out in the parking lot, the guys that were whining, moaning, just he held guys accountable and they hated it. And I just swore, like, I would never work for that guy. Like, I thought it was awesome that we got to work for the owner who I reported to.
It's funny because even at that time, like right before I took over, you and I you would still role play with me. I still trained you guys from time to time, but I was not a direct supervisor.
No, you had no direct authority over what we did. You were just kind of this outside force that was helping to train, but I didn't have to report to you. And so, yeah, looking back at it, like how naive I was, we'll say I was young, but it was ignorance really. And I can remember the feeling in the bottom of my stomach when Scott sat us down and said that, like, you guys were taking it over. I literally had just this sinking feeling of, like, I'm going to have to quit. Like, I've been pretty verbal to my wife and family that, like, I would never work for this guy. I remember going home and just telling my wife at that point, like, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, I literally have no idea. And so I started to get my resume together, started to prepare that. And within the first 2 weeks of Brian really diving into the electrical, the Sparky side of things, like, my opinion was completely shifted. I realized that you actually cared about the guys. You wanted better for, the guys that worked for you. And you had a wealth of knowledge that I wanted to take advantage of. Realized that the people that I had been hearing from were just the people that couldn't handle any type of accountability or wanting to improve their lives. And so, looking back at it, I'm so glad I didn't quit that day. How different
I appreciate
my
that,
life,
buddy. We went through and fired all those plumbers, by the way.
Yeah. So, and then, really from there, by the time that Brian was taking over the electrical, I felt like sound enough electrically that I dove hard into, learning the sales process and perfecting that craft. The first episode I was on for Waste No Day, Riches and Niches. And for me, that was surge protection.
Mm-hmm.
A great episode. But the thing that, like, always stuck with me with that is, what changed my sales career, my life entirely, was getting over the idea of only offering things when it was convenient for me, and offering stuff literally, if they didn't have it, I was offering it. And for me, that was surge protection. And that changed my income that year when I committed to doing that, and just have continuously tried to work at it, getting better. So from there, then Brian and I obviously worked pretty closely together. Basically, felt like I was his guinea pig. Hey, here, we're going to go try this. Go out in the field, try it. I was willing to do so. Benefited, I believe, both him and myself quite a bit. And so we learned a lot. We fine-tuned a lot. And, things have been, going from there.
Yeah, your name comes up quite a bit on this show, obviously, and I assume you hear it. I have no idea if you still listen. But, and then even in boot camp, well, hopefully you make a boot camp at some point before we stop doing them, whenever that might be. But you're talked about often in the boot camp, in just the fact that, I had my system and my process that I was running myself and then was training people on before you and I really got to work, not only to work together, but the way you describe it. You might even have put it lightly, the amount of one-on-one time that Jamie and I spent, because I'm willing to work with anyone that I'm responsible for in my leadership role, wherever I'm at. But Jamie reached out so much more than anyone I've worked with before or since. Whether he ran a call and it sold, if it sold, he reached out. If it didn't sell, he reached out. In the morning after the meeting, he wanted 5 minutes. At the end of his day, oftentimes he would call me, despite the fact we talked about just about every call throughout the day. When he said he was going to squeeze every dropout earlier, he meant it, because he just felt like I had the answer to every question. I did not. certainly did not. And I don't now, although I have a lot more answers, but he just obviously felt like and would say that, well, you have more answers than I do. So let me get as much as I can out of it. And then the guinea pig thing it's absolutely accurate. It was like I never stopped training. I haven't stopped now. I still haven't stopped spending an enormous amount of money every year on my personal development and as being a sales trainer and a leader and a developer of young men, which is, I feel like, part of my role in life. And Jamie felt like it was part of his job to get as much of that as he could out of me. And when I could test these things in the field on someone who was intelligent enough to understand exactly what I was asking for, and then go out and try it and give me a step-by-step account of how it went and how it didn't go, whether it went as planned or not, I could add these things into the presentation that I train, knowing whether they really worked or not. And he would do it as many times as it took to either know it doesn't work or know that it does work. And it's because you said, I think it's been beneficial for both of us. It's been wildly beneficial for me. Like you and I are talking, I'm like, bro, you should go to a boot camp. You're like, yeah, if it's free. I'm like, oh, Jamie's Jamie, baby. Jamie, he has the world belongs to the askers tattooed on his wrist, I believe.
You don't get what you don't ask for, man. And I'm not afraid to ask.
And I'm absolutely, we'll do one on the East Coast. Nashville's the next one, beginning of May. We'll do one on the East Coast soon, and you'll absolutely have a reserved seat. You'll just have to, drive or fly or whatever it is. Yeah. But the fact is that he was so willing to be a test subject for all of these concepts. He always felt like, I'm not closing at 100%. So there's something I need to learn here. And I know to this day, like when I was rolling out new closes, like the Proud Wife close or the reverse engineering close, I give them to Jamie and I'm like, go nuts and let me know how these things go, and I'm more than anyone I've worked with before or since. I just know they're going to be done word for word. And the feedback I get is going to be 100% honest, not him kind of covering his ego here and there and saying, oh, I said it just like this, when it was actually said, with Rilla now, it makes it certainly a little bit easier to know for sure. But I've never needed that with Jamie. It's been very honest, accurate assessment of himself, which is freaking difficult, man. I don't know that I could ever have done it that way.
And Brian, this is a point to you. It's a point to the culture that we worked hard to create, but also like a message to, the other leaders out there that like you cultivated a space where like I could tell you that I failed and I could come to you and like we could talk through that without there being repercussions, right? Like I distinctly remember, I was going through a little bit of a slump. It was early on, and you pushed me to go get kicked out of a call. Like you were like, today at your first call, like I want you to not take no for an answer and to push that. And I ended up not getting that call. I remember it distinctly, but what it did show me was that even though I got like told no enough of times that they were kind of like help me out the door, I still didn't get a bad review from it. And so it was one of those though that like when we talk about being willing to be that guinea pig, as a leader, you created the space to allow me to fail within safe parameters, right? It wasn't just free for alls. Of course, there was, it was intentional with it, but it created that space to feel like it was okay to try those things.
Yeah, and it sounds tough, but I've done this with many technicians over the years, and I've done your job today is to get kicked out of a call. Your job is to ask so many times that the client boots you, and I will eat the bad review if it comes. This is just one that we'll eat. I'll make it up to the client on the back end. But what I'm trying to do is when you get somebody who's so afraid of the rejection, and nobody actually feels like that's the case, but as a sales leader for so long and having dealt with that myself severely, maybe worse than most people in the beginning, I can see it on somebody, even if they can't see it on themselves. And what they need to do sometimes is just go face the ultimate rejection, is that this client hates me, never wants to see me again, and kicks me out of their home. And what they have to realize on the way back to the truck is as we talk about on here often, I did not die.
Yep.
I'm fine. I'm going back to the same place I left this morning. My boss is not mad at me. In fact, because I told you that's exactly what I wanted you to do, there's going to be a little bit of celebration, and the crew's going to celebrate too. But what you're going to realize is I can really go all the way in asking, and there is no severe consequence for it. Now, what I didn't say was go to a 2-year-old Cutler hammer panel and tell them this thing's a fire hazard. It's going to burn your house down. Nothing like that.
Absolutely not.
Go find something that actually needs to be done that's worth more to that client than the money they're going to spend for it, that you would tell your mom to do in her home, even if she had to pay full price. And don't stop asking until they either say yes or kick you out. And oftentimes the people end up getting a yes, which is, it's probably 50-50 which one's better, because they pushed so hard they thought they'd get kicked out and then ended up getting a yes. Now they know they can. I probably like it more when they actually get booted out of the call, because you need to develop that armor as a young, kind of softer around the edges, barely a man, just kind of exiting boyhood. And now you're out there dealing with 55-year-old salt and pepper, highly successful men and women in their elaborate homes. You've got all the confidence of a 9-year-old when you're walking up in there, and what you have to realize is there's no death at the end of a real hard rejection, unfortunately. And not everybody needs this, because there are some people who are just abrasive and they have no problem offending people. These people need to come back the other way.
Yeah.
But when you have someone who really, really genuinely cares about people, they're going to struggle to ask a question they think is going to end in a no, because we take it very personally. So getting kicked out of a call in the beginning can be one of the most therapeutic things that happens to a young tech.
Well, not only that, but like overcoming that fear of pushing past the first no. Like when you think about the people that are successful, in any type of sales industry, realizing that first answer, that first no, can very much so just mean absolutely nothing. And the second and the third just means that they're not ready to say yes yet. And there's something else we got to figure out. And so for me, that's where pushing past and getting kicked out really changed my mentality towards it. Is like, you can learn to have a curious heart and a curious mind to ask more questions after they told you no that first time, and realize that like you can do that pretty stinking far before people will kick you out.
100%. There's almost, there are a million studies done on the fact that most human beings are built to say no 3 times. And we're not really built for that 4th one when it's something that we have genuine interest in.
Yep.
And it's the reason that we'll get to that candy aisle or the checkout line with my 7 and 10-year-old. And as I'm walking up to the line at the grocery store here, Sprouts, I go, oh, wait, hold up, girls. Come here. Eyeball daddy. Look at me. Do not ask for that candy in that aisle. Listen to me. Look at me. Do not ask for that candy in that aisle. If you do, I'm putting the treats up that with the chips that we just got you guys going back. We're putting them up. The reason is they're going to ask. You're going to go, no. They're going to ask again. You're going to go, Dad, Dad said no. They're going to ask again. Girls, I said no. And there's people watching. All of a sudden your voice is getting elevated. You're turning a little red, You're getting embarrassed and angry at the same time. And you just snatch it off the thing. And you're like, here, quiet. Just take it. Right? Because we're only built for so many.
Having kids has completely changed my mind that like, as humans, we are predispositions to sell, to go for what we want. Like, and anybody that has kids knows that exact thing. Like
closers, little closers.
They are closers, man. They don't hear the no. They just keep going. And at some point we work that out of them. And it's something as I'm raising my children, I have 3 young children right now, 1 on the way. And that like, I'm trying to like call. Yeah. You don't know about that, right, Brian?
Yeah. I did not know that.
You got a little boy
Good
on the
news,
way.
buddy. A little boy.
Yeah. So
yeah, buddy.
Be,
congrats.
2 girls, 2 boys. But
that's awesome.
It's something that like, as I'm trying to like steer the children, that like, when I do say no, that we can't do something or whatever, like to still encourage the fact that they're willing to ask, because I don't want to beat that out of them.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that is going to serve them so well in the future to getting what they want. And so, yeah, like if you have kids, you know what that's like.
I don't know if there's anything worse to do to a kid than the thing that I did so much to my older two that I try very hard to steer clear of with my younger two, which is because I said so and don't ask again.
Yeah.
It's like, no, they're not objects. Like with my dog, when I say sit, you better sit. I don't need any back talk, right? Who cares? But with the kids, it's like, no, go ahead and ask why. Like, and let's conversate about it. Let's have an understand. Now, if they're running out toward the street and there's a UPS truck coming, well, we're not going to have a conversation about that, obviously. Just snatch them out of the street. But if it's not something like that, it's just me being impatient because I'm tired today, because it was just me and Nate episode and I have to do all the freaking work, you know? if I'm exhausted and I just don't have the patience to have this debate, it's like, no, that's me being a lazy father. That's me giving all my energy at work and bringing none home for them. And that's not fair to them. So you're dead on. I believe we should just be having conversations with the kids. Let them ask why and then explain it. And if you don't have a good answer,
tell them. Like,
maybe you need to reevaluate what you're telling them to do or not to do, you know? Or at least for me personally, and what I'll realize is like, yeah, I think I just wanted you to do it because, you know, I want to watch a show or whatever. You're in the way. Just get out of the way.
Naturally, it does feel good to be in charge. So
yeah, does it? I don't know. Come on, I'm kind of over that.
yeah.
So 100%. And they're little objection overcoming closing machines naturally. There's nothing you can say that's like to a kid that's enough logic, especially when they're like 2 or 3 at that checkout aisle, right? And they just keep hitting you with get them into like 5, 6, and they start hitting you with their own logic. And it's not the deepest logic in the world, but you can see that they're actually reasoning in ways to overcome your objection. It's like, if you really look at it from that angle and you're in a sales role, it's fascinating to watch this happen.
They believe in what they're asking for. They believe in what they want, right? And so, you know, as we look at creating options for our clients and doing what is good for them in terms of giving them options, like, you have to find a way to believe in what you're talking about, because there's no way past, you know, that to get, you might offer it and put it on your list to show your boss that, oh, I offered this, right? But like, if you do not believe in what you're talking about, you're not going to have that gumption to go for that second no, that third no, that fourth no.
Yeah.
Where when you look at the kids, they're like, they believe that they want to do whatever they're talking about. Like, they want it. They're going for it.
And they'll figure out how it's good for you.
Right. Like, they're closers. You got it. Yeah. It's been really cool to see that in my kids. And I never would have thought of that before, you know, having children or being in a role kind of like this. And so I find that very intriguing.
My 17-year-old son, Ethan, who used to produce the show for us, he's recently got a girlfriend, finally. I know, right, guys? Thank you. And he was asking me and Mom if he could go up to Flagstaff, which is a couple hours away, up into the woods at a cabin. Yeah, it's an awesome place with her and her older sister and, I don't know, somebody else. And I'm just like, no, like, what are you talking about? I want to be a grandfather. Not yet. Like, that's not happening. And he's like, well, you know, and there's some truth to this. He's like, well, Dad, when have I ever betrayed your trust?
Ooh.
And I literally sat there for a second and I thought about all the times he's been in trouble, big trouble. And the only 2 I could think of were fighting at school, which that's only in trouble with Mom. You're only in trouble with me if you lost and I paid for all those jiu-jitsu lessons, bro. Yeah. You went kickboxing and wrestling. Like, if you lose, we got beef. But if you won, we're cool. Because he's not a bully. He has none of that in him. He's very respectful.
Yeah.
But I thought of all the times he's been in trouble. There's 0. I thought of all the times he was like kind of outright told not to do something. And he did it. There's 0. He's never been like dishonest. And I'm like, you know, in those terms, you're absolutely right. My issue is you're 17. You're getting ready to be out on your own. No question. For the time that you're here, it's my job to protect you from certain things. certain things you might not even know you're susceptible to. And this is one of them. But let's do something. Build a presentation, build an intro, build a body of your conversation, understand what objections I'm going to use and write rebuttals to them, and then go ahead and rehearse it. And let's have a conversation on whatever night I'm going to pick them up from work. And he said, okay. Well, I pick him up that night and he starts reading from a piece of paper. Like, no, bro. The answer is no if you're going to be reading. Like, take some time. Yeah, and then he hit me with it. Presentation, rebuttals, like whole laid out sales script. And it was pretty darn good. He's not going, but it was pretty darn good.
That's that client that calls you out that wants a quote, but like literally, they're not doing nothing.
No. They like me, they have their, and this is it, guys. So for all of us to remember is like, they have the, oh, no. Like I said, I have 2 other bids coming, and I always talk to my uncle who has a CPA about every financial decision I make. And also we do the altar call at church before we make any kind of decision. And we have 3 or 4 men from elders of the church pray with us before we do anything like this. So they have already decided these are the things they're going to say to you when you ask them to buy. If you start falling apart when they say this and you let the nerves take over and you show that defeated look on your face, I got you. Mm-hmm. And I got Ethan. Unfortunately, he didn't go very deep because he could, quote unquote, tell that I meant business with my objection. Now, he made me feel a certain way when he said, when have I ever betrayed your trust? And he should have seen it, right? He probably could have gotten somewhere with that, but he was kind of defeated because his really low level rebuttals and stuff, it was just, it was the weak sales trainers that just say, well, you say this, they say that, you say this. They, they say, how much is it? Or they ask you a question, you say, if I could, would you? Those kind of things. There's no depth to it at all. It just sounds cool on paper. And that's kind of what happened. But with us in our sales calls, in our service calls, if we're willing to push through each of those objections like they don't mean anything, like that's what they're there for. They're smoke screens that are going to put off the weak technicians, the weak salespeople, but they're not real. So let's just keep talking. If you're willing to do that, you're going to make them just fall apart, because if they're not real, if they are fake to the client, they're not going to hold on to them that long.
Well, and the flip side to that, though, Brian, too, is if they are real, let's address them. There's no better time to address those things than right here, right now, right? Like, you run everything through your CPA. Yeah, cool. Like, let's give them a call and see what they say. Because at the end of the day, if that is part of their true process, and we try to like shortcut it with some crazy way to try to get around it, if it's actually part of their process, like, they're going to walk you through that. And so the objection is just continuing talking about it with a curious heart and mind, right? To hear what they have to say. And then you'll be able to pick out exactly what you're saying. Because most of them are the smoke screens, right? But there are the ones that, like, it is literally the true process that they are going to walk through. And you got to walk down that path with them.
Absolutely.
Just going to segue into some of the evolution, right? So over the podcast, if we have longtime listeners, I'm sure they've actually heard some of your evolution. You have delineated some of that for our listeners, even in telling of your story and the things that have gone on, not only in your career, but even in your perspective of training and Brian and accountability, and that you can't always take people's opinions at face value and all this types of stuff. So you've been evolving in your career, you've been evolving in your maturity and your perspective of the world. Clearly, you are evolving in your role as a father and a husband, and congratulations for that. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And one of the things that we wanted to focus on today was the evolution of your objections, and specifically the overcoming of those objections. And to kind of set the stage here for the rest of the conversation, what I'm looking for here is, the Jamie of yesteryear, like the Jamie who didn't like Brian, but, thought he was all whatever. The Jamie who was still trying to get his wits about him. The Jamie who was still trying to focus on both the trade and starting to learn some of the communication, because That's where a lot of people are. Like they're in that
Yeah.
place where they're trying to balance, man, I still don't even know how to do this task over here. And these guys are saying that I need to have this high level conversation. They're feeling a bit swamped over. Let's talk about the way that Jamie would overcome objections and how you've evolved over your career and your learnings and investment and people mentoring you and all these things that have developed you into the beast that you are today, and then how you would overcome that same objection. So does that make sense for you? Let's set it up with maybe a common one where you can say, like, reflecting upon yesteryear, this was an objection that when I hit it, in year one, I would just do X. And now when I hear that objection, I do Y.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the most popular one is the I got to think about it, right? Like, I mean, that can go down so many different avenues in terms of what that actually means. But I think that's something that as technicians or as any type of sales role, right? Obviously, we're talking focused on that. That's what we do here. But the I got to think about it in yesteryear, it was, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I agree. Like, this is a big decision. Like, when do you want to let me know? So I would be asking for their guidance in terms of how long they need to think about it. Like, when do you want me to touch base with you? Things like that. And where it's transformed at this point is more of me leading that and like guiding that conversation to say, completely understand. This is something that does require a little bit of thought. I wouldn't be making this decision, without spending a couple minutes here talking with my wife as well. Why don't we do this? I've got some stuff I've got to go button up. Okay. It's going to take me 10, 15 minutes. Why don't the two of you sit here, take some time and talk about it? When I come back, I'll just touch base with you and see if you guys have any questions. We can kind of go from there. Does that sound fair? So where I shifted that, the heart of it though, was being much more letting the client tell me and dictate how that thinking about it was going to go, to me acknowledging it, but then still leading and creating that space to say, okay, now here, you think about it. And I'm going to be touching base on the backside. And, this is something that Brian and I had worked with quite a bit. I mean, the amount of times that I come back from creating that space and letting two people have that time where I'm not just sitting in front of them to communicate and talk. And you can be down in the basement and you can literally be hearing them talking about what's going on and kind of have a pretty good idea of what you're about to walk back upstairs into when you create it in the sense of, running that call. Like, you're the professional, lead them. And so I'd say that that's one distinct difference that kind of stands out for me, at least.
Yeah, and I love hearing that from you, Jamie, because you brought it up very succinctly. It's about you maintaining control over the call while still providing the permission for them to feel like they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like, those driver ed cars where they have a steering wheel, they have two steering wheels, two brake pedals, and all that type of thing. And you're sitting in the passenger seat and the client thinks they're driving, but you absolutely are able to control and steer the vehicle in certain situations. And I think that's been some of your development, right? So if you reflect upon the immature Jamie, the Jamie that was in year one, year two, you were doing a lot more of following. You were just like letting the client dictate how things are going to go and what's going to happen next. And now as you reflect upon like what your current process is, it's not that you're being a jerk. It's not that you're telling them, forcing them into things. What you're doing is you are assertively and politely giving them space and instructing them what to do during that time, right? Which doesn't seem abrasive to me at all. It's like, actually, it seems quite pleasant rather than you sit there and we awkwardly look at each other while I would like to have kind of a private conversation with my wife, or that you're like hounding me over something and I can't even think and make a logical decision, or that you just immediately give up, in which case I haven't really processed it either. And you're just like, oh, well, maybe we'll get back to you. Sure, whenever.
Well, and to that point, when we talk about objections, when we talk about being able to, think on your feet and work through an objection, right? Something that does come up. I've never seen anybody do it quite like Logan does, because his mind just processes at a speed in terms of responses in the moment that are insane. For me, it's not that case. And so what I had to work so hard at, and this is part of why I am so, focused on a process, is I have created, in the way that I run a call, obviously worked very heavily with Brian at doing this, and so thankful for that. But we work so hard to create a process where I do the same thing every single call. It does not matter what that call is for. The structure of that looks the same. And by doing that and having that so down that I don't even have to think about it, it gives me the computing power in my brain that when someone does ask a question that, like, because I can't prepare for everything, I have the mental capacity to address it. Where if I'm still trying to figure out how to work on the iPad, or what my next step in the call is going to be, or XYZ, man, your computing power, you're just working so much harder. And so, being able to handle an objection starts by truly working on the fundamentals of following a process. And then that process will continue to expand and develop. And so part of mine is handling a bunch of these objections before I even ever get them.
One thing that astounds me, Jamie, is young moms who have, like, 1, 2, 3 toddlers or something like that, and their ability to plan out a day, factoring in like nap time, and then, oh, I'll squeeze this in for that, and, I'll do this piece here and that piece there. If somebody puts me in charge of a room full of toddlers, I'm just going to try to survive. We're just going to try to get to the end of the day. We're not going to try to fit in extra things. We're not going to do chores. We're just going to make it. All kids are present and accounted for somewhat in the same condition they were at the start of the day, right? And the reason I'm bringing that up is because that's so amazing to me, because they're actually, people who have that gift of multitasking. They're planning out the day in such a way that they are positioning free time, white space. They're multitasking. They're like, during this time, I can do this and that. While I'm waiting for this, I can be working on that. You've done that same concept in your systemized process of doing things, where, hey, maybe you're not the fastest person in terms of responses, but you've identified that. And then you've pre-built in to the system time for you to process, as well as time for the homeowner to process, realizing that they too may not be the fastest response on these types of decisions.
Yeah.
And that systematic approach to things is beautiful because it is basically universally applicable, meaning that if you're gifted on objections, but you're not gifted on, conversation, if you're gifted on personality reading, but you're not gifted on dealing with a one-legger, if you're gifted on talking over Zoom, but you're not gifted on dealing with a dog at your feet, like, you can build in these types of things to help overcome some of that through a systemized process, giving yourself space and or adjustments to be made real time while you're in the call.
Well, and Nate, I'm glad that you're pointing a lot of this stuff out, because, like, when I look at it, this is not stuff that I did on my own. Like, this is where I'm going to encourage everybody that's listening, is to find somebody, find a mentor, find somebody that is willing, to invest some time into you. And what I can see, from Brian, from myself with helping guys, is like, people that are in leadership, we want to help. We want to see people succeed. But the large part of that is you've got to show some of that effort. And so be humble enough to go to find a mentor and ask for help, because they will be able to see things that you cannot. That perspective, that just the fact that, like, they're looking at it from a bird's eye view. And so Brian was very influential to me to help me with that. Like, I'm not great with across the T's, dot the I's, like every little detail type thing. That is not a strong suit of mine. And so when we take a look at that, and when we build into a process to help, cover me on some of that. And so, objections are the same thing, where, when you're running into an objection, you're just getting beat up with it all the time. Let's find a way to work that into our process before the clients even talk about this. And so that's with working with somebody can be so beneficial. I mean, I look back as we were kind of talking about this a little bit, I'm thinking of, just times that I've been in a home with a client. I have one that just kind of stands out with me. Again, surge protection. I'm a big fan of surge protectors, right? But in her home, we'd been there before. We'd recommended the surge protector, didn't have it. Her panel was in great shape, but she's just missing it. And I brought it up to her again, and she was honest with me and just said, listen, the reason that I do not have it is I had a surge protector that caused a fire at my other house. She burnt half my house down. She's like, I will not put a surge protector in my home.
SciComm.
Yeah, it was. And so it was one of those. I was like, okay, like she, we had built the rapport enough that like she was honest with me as to why, because I was like pretty adamant that like these things are important. It's a benefit to her. And when she told me that, I was like, okay, like I hear you. I remember walking down to the panel in this little like room in the middle of the house. It was technically set up as a sub panel, a QO. I can picture it like it was yesterday. And I texted Brian. I'm like, dude, I need help. Like, what do I even say to this? And so I created enough of space for me to be able to reach out to Brian to see what we could even do, right? Like, I don't want to talk about this after I leave the call. So I went out to my truck, called him. He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. I have one of these in my house, right? Like, I do. I have one for my whole panel at my house. And Brian knew that, of course. And he's like, what I want you to do is I want you to go in there and just ask her, like, hey, do you mind if I ask you a few questions about the surge protector? I got her permission to bring this back up to talk about it. I said, listen, I know what happened to you is a very real thing, and it could be extremely terrifying. But I do want to share that, like, being that this is what I do day in and day out, I've got a wife and at that point 2 kids at home. They stay at home. They're young. My wife is there with them. I have one of these things at my main breaker panel. Do you think that if there was any chance that I believe that this would happen or cause a fire in my home, that I'd have it at my house with my wife and children there? And she kind of looked at me. She's like, well, yeah, no, you wouldn't. I'm like, I understand the model that you had. It was a known issue. It's terrifying. The one that we're talking about here for your main breaker panel, we have a lot of experience with. I would not have it in my home, nor would I be asking you to have it in yours if I thought that there was any chance of a risk. If it's something that you'd be willing to trust me on, I think you're really going to benefit from having this. What would you like me to do? Dude, she freaking bought the surge protector.
Yeah.
But that was an example where, like, I didn't have the answer right then and there. Like, I didn't handle that objection right off the top of my head. Now, when someone brings that one up again, it is in my mind now. But this is where having, even just someone else at your company that you can call a friend, it doesn't have to be someone that's some sales guru, right? Just that outside perspective to try something and be willing to create enough of space that you can think, let the client think. Man, it just helps you with almost any objection.
Yeah, and there's 2 points that I want to make on that as well. Even at that point, and that wasn't that terribly long ago, because I remember I remember you not even wanting to go to that call because you were saying, like, panel's brand new, everything's done, she needs whole home surge, and she's not going to do it.
Yeah.
And my attitude to that is always the same. It's 2 words. Go ahead, buddy. You know it?
Yeah.
What's the 2 words?
Gotta make them want it.
My 2 words whenever we see something like that as an obstacle, as it can't be done, I had it on a sticky note in my truck on my dashboard at all times with an exclamation point after it. It's game on.
Oh, yeah.
It's game on.
I was blanking on that one. Yep.
And the reason I would always say game on to myself is when at Yes Plumbing, when I was there, we had not nearly enough calls for the amount of plumbers we had. And we were doing water heater flush plumbing maintenance calls twice a year because we were so call strapped at the time. And there were a lot of calls that I looked at and just said, there's no freaking way. Like, this is a complete waste of a drive across the Vegas Valley. And I had to get to the point where no matter what the call was, I had to say game on. Like, I'm going to figure it out. Or, you're on call and you're getting called at 9:30 at night to go 50 minutes away because you flushed a water heater and forgot to turn the temperature back up.
Oof.
And she works the night shift at the hospital and needs a shower before she goes to work. Like, you're going. There's all there is to it. And I would just say, if I got to lace these boots up anyway, like, I'm going to make some money. So game on. And exactly what I said to him, I guarantee, because this is what I say to text all the time when they say they don't want to hit this call. I said, game on, baby. Like, this is how we figure this out. Like, if you were going to the easy call, there's no learning there. But game on, we're actually going to figure this thing out. And even at that time, for sure, Jamie was a better salesperson than me by now. Like, Jamie would outsell me day in, day out. No question.
Sure doesn't feel that way.
I'm not in the emotional situation that you're in. Like, I'm not going back and forth with this lady. I seem like I'm a 10 times better salesperson because I'm sitting at an office staring out the window at some birds, right? With no pressure whatsoever of whether this call sells or not. I'm on salary, baby.
Yeah.
I don't need you to sell this to make my mortgage payment. Now, that's the crappy part. The good part is I don't feel the same pressure. I don't feel the same emotion. I can think so much more clearly than you can, which is why, despite how good Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods is at golf, they have somebody who's not 20% as good as they are standing next to them before they take their shot, called a golf coach. Yeah. If that person was as good as Tiger Woods, he would be playing golf and making Tiger Woods money, but he's not. And the reason he's standing there is because mostly he doesn't feel the same amount of pressure, the same amount of emotion. So you have to have someone to call. And more importantly, I can't stop screaming this at my team when they go through 2 calls with zeros and I didn't get a phone call. You have to call them. Mm-hmm. You have to reach out and always be saying to yourself, the person on the other end of this line, whether it's me for my team, whether it's each other, I don't care who it is. It can be the CFO at your company. Give them a shot. But you have to be saying to yourself, they have the answer. I know it. They have the answer I need on this call. And you get yourself out to that truck, figure out a way to excuse yourself. Even figuring out a way to excuse yourself is building that improv muscle that you need to be a good salesperson, because you still have to come up with a good, valid reason to get out and come right back. And in that situation, it's tough. But get out to the truck, make the phone call. Bro, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's exactly what I said. Here's exactly what he said. Here's exactly what I said. And then she came in and she said this. And then here's where we're at. And let someone have the opportunity to play with you and have fun with you and think through that rebuttal that Jamie and I came up with. And then go back in and use it exactly how you were told to use it. And then give feedback on it. And not everyone. I'm sure there's way more that Jamie went out and called me and we came up with something cool and creative and got a door slammed in his face than there was with the successful ones. But
we don't talk about those, Brian.
Right. You know what the great part is? We don't even remember them.
Not at all.
They never happened in our memory whatsoever. I think we're actually 100%. So congratulations, buddy.
Yeah,
the first sales team that nailed 100%.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah, and you don't remember them, and you don't take trauma with you, and you don't get actually bogged down in life by the rejection on these calls. You actually just get thicker skin. You actually just develop armor and become more and more invincible to it. But here's the problem. When you shy away from it and you decide not to do it on this one because I'm just not feeling it, you don't stay the same. We get weaker. The skin softens, the armor falls off, and you get weaker. There's actually a part of our brain that grows when we do things we know we should do and don't want to do, but we do them anyway. There's a literal part of our brain that grows. And that part shrinks when we go the other way. And it becomes far more difficult to do something we know we should do, but don't want to. And when you exercise that muscle, it gets stronger and stronger. And you become a machine looking for these things that you really don't want to do, but you know you need to. So we have to be looking for those opportunities at all times. We have to. And whether it's just getting up super early, crazy times in the morning. You know, we had Jocko Willink on here. Dude gets up at 4:30. I get up at 3:45. Like, yeah, you're beating me in every aspect of life, but not here, baby. I see him on Instagram, 4:18, woke up. I'm like, yeah, I remember when 4:18 came and went. I had already brushed my teeth, bro. Yeah, but it's like, it's not like Yeah, you start by getting up and shooting out for a walk or whatever and just getting up 15 minutes earlier. But unfortunately, if that muscle is going to get stronger and stronger, you're finding more and more ways to make it even more uncomfortable. So, and I cheated a little bit there. I moved from Pennsylvania to Phoenix when the time was a 3-hour difference, right? So I moved there 4 a.m. here, right when I moved, felt like 7 a.m. to me. So I think I was getting up at 4:45 and when I lived in Pennsylvania, and I just shifted it back an hour to 3:45, and my body, I was just up anyway. So I was like, why not? So I just made that the new thing that I do. And what you'll do is when you become this discomfort seeking machine where you're constantly flexing every muscle you can find in your brain and your willpower, you'll find reasons and ways to make yourself uncomfortable, knowing that you're becoming just more and more buff on the inside. You're just becoming jacked, and figuring out ways where you can ask one more time. Even if you do it in a way that you'll find no pressure, that you'll find no resistance from the client, very little friction back, that's still exercising the muscle. So it doesn't have to be, yeah, I think we're just going to hold off for now. Give us a couple weeks to think about it. We'll probably call you back. And you just immediately go, well, what is it exactly that you need to think about? Because, you'll never have more information than you're going to have right here when I'm standing here. I'm like an encyclopedia for plumbing, right? You could just hit them right back immediately. But for a lot of you listening, that's what I just did there is very difficult. There are people listening to this that would find that impossible. Cool. Then dust your hands off and say, sounds great. I got a little bit more paperwork to do here on the tablet, and I'm going to get out of your hair. And just let them start talking about whatever they were talking about before. And, oh yeah, so anyway, you said your son plays high school football. What's that like? I actually didn't play any sports in school. And then just let them start talking about it. And they'll get proud and they'll get happy and they'll forget all about the fact that they looked at you as a salesman a minute ago. And you'll sneak over there with one that's not abrupt or abrasive and doesn't make you feel nervous or too terrified. And you just start closing the tablet and go, hey, before I roll, I just got to ask. Like I said, I got this stuff in the truck. You want me to just throw it in? And just sneak one more ask in there, right? Go around the fence. Don't try to fight the dog. Just run around the other side of the house and slide one in there and watch what happens. And hey, if they say no, thanks. We said no already. How dare you? Get out. Cool. Leave. You're fine. You shake it right off. But what happened right there, just by you being creative and figuring out another way to ask, flexed that muscle. And that muscle got bigger and stronger. And the next time you're tasking yourself with doing it, which better be the next call, that much easier and literally easier. That's the great news.
Well, and you get to the point that like when someone doesn't give you any objections and they go with your top option, you're like, man, where did I go wrong? Like, was there stuff that I was not talking to them about? Like, there's no way I built the need that well, right? Like, there's no way. Like, where did I go wrong? Come on, give me something, right? Give me some type of no, right? Like, I want to hear
it. You sound like Logan now. Logan,
don't get me wrong. Well, he doesn't hear them. That's the issue.
Yeah, he literally thinks they don't exist. Logan Altman, who was on the show here a few weeks ago, and Jamie came up, trained together, firing on all cylinders together out there in Pennsylvania. And Logan was just saying he didn't get any objections. He didn't know what the issue was, but he wasn't getting any. And Jamie went and did a ride along with him. And what was it that on that first call? How many did he get?
Well, so let's set the stage a little bit more accurately. I was in a little bit of a slump, and I needed something to get me out of it. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm riding with Logan. Like, I got to go with him. And so we pull up to this townhome in Lancaster City, and we walk in, and just guy wanted a quote for a light or something. We were doing a maintenance with it, and Logan got the job. I'm sitting on the stairs as Logan's talking to this guy, hoarder home, like kind of rough to be in, no place to sit. So I'm sitting on the stairs. Logan got the job. It wasn't anything big. I want to say it was like $1,500. But we get out to the truck and I was like, Logan, How many times did he tell you no? Logan looked at me like straight in the eyes, like, what are you talking about? He didn't tell me no. And I'm like, no, like, seriously. He's like, what do you mean? I got the job. He didn't tell me no. 5 times, 5 different ways that guy told Logan no. And it wasn't straight out like, no, get out of my house. It was, all right, well, like, I got to talk to my wife, or like, man, I don't have that type of money. I can't do that now. Like, things like that. And Logan doesn't even, like, he doesn't even hear them. It's incredible. An absolute blast to be in the home with. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, it's kind of you to say, Jamie, and obviously we've had Logan on most recently here a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And as we're bringing things in for a landing, Logan has I think he actually is getting a little bit more systems oriented, but he's also very dynamic personality. And, so we're covering all sides of that equation. We have guys who are very personality driven. We have guys like you who are more process driven. Both things can work. Some may be easier to duplicate than others. But as we kind of bring things in for a landing on this episode, some of your evolution, I believe, has been to foresee objections coming and then build in counter objections into your process prior to the objection actually coming up, so that it has already been either addressed or maybe even handled before the objection occurs. So let's kind of conclude the show with that type of a thought process and some of the things that you have found effective in building them into your process presentation to avoid the objection from being a real thing.
Yeah. So some of the big ones that I've run into, when I am doing an electrical maintenance tune-up, a service call, whatever, having people acknowledge, and before I was building it into up front, I was getting beat up a lot of what water damage looked like in a panel. Like, there was water damage in a panel. Common sense says water and electricity obviously don't mix. But I was running into clients telling me, well, that's not bad. So their picture of what water damage compared to like what I was showing them, it was not building the need. They couldn't get over that hurdle. I was getting pushback on, what signs of overheating or burning or how hot a panel should be was. I was getting pushback on the spouse not being there and not being able to like communicate with them. I was getting beat up on the time frames in terms of like, hey, we got to think about it type stuff. And so what I really started to do was building a lot of those things into my upfront contract, right as I'm in the front of the door, for a maintenance front of the door, for a service call, as I was building what I was going to do with a maintenance, right? So I turned every service call into a maintenance. And so by doing that process, what I was bringing up is, before I was even looking at their panel specifically, before I'd even walked into the home, I was building a picture in their mind of what water damage looked like and getting them to agree that water and electricity didn't mix. So I was setting the stage and controlling their perception of what bad was before we even had any idea of what theirs was in the home. The other thing I was doing the same thing with what overheating or burning in a panel might look like. Setting the stage on, what that looks like and talking about those things up front. What I ended up doing then, by moving those to up front and talking basically an accusations audit, right? Like, we're talking about these things before they even ever come up. I completely changed. When I got to the point that I was showing them what was going on, I was not having to overcome the objection of if this project needed done. We were now trying to determine whether they wanted me to do it, right? Like our company, which is a whole nother objection, right? Like, they could believe it needs done, but like, do they want us to do it? And why do they want us to do it? And then also, which one do they want? And so I stopped getting the objection of like the disbelief of something needing done or not. And so, bringing those into that process. And so that's going to be very different for a lot of people in terms of, some of those objections. But the other one then was the spouse. And so as part of that is getting their permission to, listen, as I'm going through, this is what we're doing. If there's anything that I see that's outside of the ordinary of that, or that would be raising a little red flag or a concern, is that something that you'd like me to make you aware of? 99% of people are going to say yes. Well, yeah, you can let me know. Awesome. Not a problem. I'll walk you through that. No matter what we run into, I'll be able to get you taken care of. But besides yourself, if there is anything major, is there anybody else that would want to know about that? And what I ended up finding is that when I asked that up front before we've dove in and done anything, I'm getting a much more honest response from people. And so they're like, well, yeah, I mean, you can let me know, but like, I'll touch base with my brother, or, I'll let my husband know what's going on. Or I'll let my wife know what's going on. And so I found that people were being much more honest with me in terms of if there was anybody else that was going to be a part of that decision. Or heck, I found out, oh, you'll let the landlord know and then send them the bill? Wait a second, I'm not even talking to the homeowner. Like, we run into those type of things by getting that authorization up front. And so now that I know that, I'm not overcoming that objection up front, right? Like, I'm not then saying, oh, well, will that person be available to talk to, or any of those things at this point. Is purely information based, so that as I walk my way through my call, I can gear my presentation to knowing those factors versus spending an hour building the need for somebody that has no authority to be making that call. Right. And then to get hit with well, you got to talk to my husband. He makes all the decisions on this, or my wife, or whoever. Right. Actually, you got to talk to my power of attorney. My son has power of attorney. He's the one that makes all these calls. Man, I wasted just an hour here talking to you about all the fine details of something.
And you've taken that even farther, if I am remembering correctly, Jamie, that sometimes you'll even ask, hey, who typically does these types of projects for you?
Yeah. Like it, so I had one today, client, first time that we were there doing an electrical safety check for him. And within the first 2 minutes, he's telling me all the electrical things that they've had done and who's done them for him. And it was a contractor friend that has been doing it for 40 some years for him. Awesome. Like, I'm not trying to push through that at the front door, but this is all great information stuff. Before they think that anything's going on or anything crazy, people are so much more relaxed and willing to just like tell you their life story. Like, he's showing me around all the outlets and all the lights that this guy's replaced and everything that I could see that this contractor did good work, been doing work for them for 40 some years. And so I found those things out. I asked directly, and even if a homeowner was like, oh, well, like, I do some electrical, right? Like, I replace this, right? That's great to know now. Now I'm not going to make him feel like an idiot for how badly he did that outlet, right? Like, when I bring it up that it's not right, I at least have that information. And so, then I'll ask the question of like, listen, as I'm going through, if there's anything that I come across, is that the type of thing that you would handle yourself? Or, if it's like a switch or an outlet, would you do that? Or if it's more major, like, where do you feel comfortable? Like, I'm willing to work with you on whatever you want to do. But it allows you to know that versus getting beat up on those things and then trying to backpedal. And so when they're the things that are coming, find a way to work that into you talking about it up front. If you're in the HVAC side and you're getting beat up over the fact that the capacitor is out of spec, right? Talk about that up front of why the importance of like, hey, part of what I'm going to be checking here is I'm going to be checking your capacitor, your starter, however you want to phrase it to your client, right? And saying, what I'm checking for is this. We're checking to make sure it's within the certain range, and here's why that's important. So you've now built that idea in their mind of why it's important for this to be in a certain spec range or whatever. And then when you come back and it's not in that, you're no longer having them processing whether or not this even needs done, right? We're able to separate that. They're able to say, like, objectively, oh, that's out of spec. It makes sense why that would not be a good thing. Hopefully mine's in spec, right? But it separates the personal connection to their home with it. Where if you're trying to bring that up all on the back end, well, now it's feeling personal. They're naturally going to be more defensive. And they might be a little skeptical that it even needs done. And so find the things like that like you're getting beat up on. Get with a mentor if you can't think of a way to bring it up on the front side, and start talking about it up front.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah. It's such a powerful introduction into the quote unquote objections hallway. And it is what it means to overcome objections up front. It's just like, look, if you're month one in a truck, don't worry about this.
Absolutely not.
The concept that we're talking about should be pretty foreign to you. But if you have hundreds of service calls behind you and you know already what some of your clients are going to say when you bring the thing up, it's time to start touching on that up front. It's such a powerful tool, but very overlooked, I would say. And when we did the 7 Deadly Objections episode, I said in the beginning something to the fact of, and I kind of always do when I'm doing objections, it tends to be everybody's favorite thing that I do and what they want me to do the most of, but it's in some ways it's what I like doing the least, because it's a bit of a cop out to be training for objections at the end. The challenge is you are going to end up getting them at the end at some point. So the people who just say, I don't do objection training at the end because you should have done. Yeah, that's all well and good. I don't care how good you get. You're still going to hear objections at the end sometimes, even the ones that you close down. But if you can attack them up front and save yourself 20% of them, 30% of them, 5%, you're making so much more money and you're doing so much less at the end. And it's just building that little bit of tension, that little bit of credibility for what you're going to talk about later. It's so impactful. I remember, man, I believe Jamie was the first technician that I worked with who really, really got obsessed with overcoming every possible objection before he got to it. I mean, utterly obsessed with it. It like blew me away, and it really changed the way I looked at the sales game in general. And it made me start adding things to my presentation, my formatted presentation that I trained, that were built to overcome objections up front. It was just like, man, Nate, do you remember when he just started running through these calls at this lightning speed where we'd be like, bro, you can't run a maintenance call in 24 minutes. And then you're like, oh, but he sold a $5,400 panel.
Like when I started here, we were supposed to spend 2 hours at an electrical maintenance. I'm like, I can't twiddle my thumbs that much, guys. Like, yeah, like it's crazy. Now there is a point to spending time with clients to break down, that connection and connecting with them. But that's the whole part of, like, for me, right? And the mental computing to help myself is like, of course, I'm still going to get objections on the back end, right? But by taking care of the most popular ones up front, it gives me more of that mental capacity to handle some of those other ones. And so that's why I get so excited about handing them up front. Objections are obviously the fun thing. We want that one witty comeback that's going to turn an objection around, right? Like everybody's looking for that answer. And the not pretty thing is the answer comes into having your process dialed to the point and making them want it, like building the need. And then once the need is built for what they want, objections are just finding a way to make it work for them.
Yeah. And then oftentimes with the end objection, it's like, and I think to myself, Amelia and I, and I'll kind of wrap with this story unless Nate has anything else. Amelia, my wife, and I were at Costco. And as Jamie knows, we didn't take our Blackstone griddle with us from Pennsylvania to Arizona. One, because
I had to do a little work for that. Oh.
Jamie got that griddle. One, because the weight of the thing, it's a lot of weight. And two, because it's a pretty big thing to fit in the moving truck. And then it's just like, we'll figure it out when we get there. So we've talked about on and off, like getting some kind of grill or something going. And once or twice, the idea of a smoker came up, and like Mike Vavrick and mainly Brendan McAmer, your manager there, Jamie.
Awesome dude.
Who actually just blew you up via text message earlier today when I told him you were coming back on the show. He's just like,
no way.
Jamie is like, yeah, he just said, you're just being completely selfless, just so willing to take time out of your day, that unpaid time, and help the team right now, and more than he's ever seen you. So I just thought it was awesome. But he's never stopped texting me pictures of his food and smokers. Like to the point where I'm like, yeah, that looks delicious, bro. I'm hungry. Why? Like, I don't do this. Like, this isn't my hobby. So I don't know why you keep sending me these,
He's trying to bring you back.
He was trying to get me to get one, just to fall in love with it.
Yeah.
So Amelia and I are walking through Costco several months after we moved here, and there's a bunch of Traeger grills set up right there. And there is a salesman who's a guy that you believe uses these things and cooks a lot. He just reminds you of that dude. And he comes up and he just starts having a conversation with us, And I'm like, okay, I want to talk to him because I want to hear a little bit, but I'm going to tell him straight up. Like I said this to Amelia and thought it to myself 4 more times before we got to him because it's a good minute walk and people were stopping to talk. So I had a little bit of time to prep and game plan with myself, my objections.
Yeah, buddy.
So I said it to her that we're going to do some more research, but let's hear what he has to say. And then I said it to myself several times on the walk over. And I just said, at the end of the day, we're going to take his advice. We're going to put it in the catalog, the file, and then we're going to move on and like look at other options, like I forget what the other models are called, but like the green egg or whatever, the other ones.
That's what Maverick's running.
So he said, we walk over and talk to him, and he's just like, just to let you know, I don't know how much you know about smokers, but Traeger is the best. And these units that you're going to be looking at right here are the highest rated units that they sell. And this one over here is actually the one I use at home. So I can tell you from personal experience, this is the best. Now, there are some things that I need to know. What size is your family? How many people do you cook for? How often do you make dinner? Boom, boom, boom. He's asking all these questions before he shows me what size grill I want. I'm just like, this guy's I didn't catch it at first for whatever reason because I was just kind of focused on what I was doing. But he was a closer, and I don't think he even knew it. So we get to the end, and my wife and I are sold on I can't think of the name of it. We're like, yeah, this is happened. And then you know what happened? I was sold on it. I was sold on the price. I didn't think it was more than I wanted to pay. They were throwing in some things that made it a little easier for me. He walked me through the process of not only putting it together, but using it the first time, made it. Wow. So I understood everything. I knew how to go home, put it together. He even had me pull up YouTube to see a really easy installation video to help me through it. And then I knew exactly how to use it tonight.
Still set your house on fire, though.
Almost. Literally, almost. And a voice in my head said, time out. Hold up, B. You said you weren't doing this today. You said you were going to do some research and learn more about it. And you don't want to end up making a mistake. So I literally did the timeout sign with my hands. Oh, timeout, George. I'm not making a purchase today. I just wanted to get all the info. I still got to look around. I still got to understand things a little bit better. I just want to know that I'm getting the best value for my money and the one that I want the most. And this is the only brand I've seen so far. And at that moment, that was the perfect objection to walk away from as a salesperson. To hand a card out and say, here's the deal. You're not going to find better. So I'm just going to give you my card because you are absolutely going to come back to me and buy this unit. And that you would have felt great. You would have felt like, hey, man, I killed it. No, I get it. Hey, he doesn't know anything about smokers. So obviously he wants to do some more research. Blah. And all the things we tell ourselves is we pat ourselves on the back and go home with no dollars in our hand for all the amount of time we spent away from the family today, and tell our wives how we sold my butt off today. I didn't make any money, but I made some friends, made some real good friends. One of these people, this dude, Brian and Mellinger, they're coming back. But he didn't do that. He said, you know what? I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly what he said, but I remember what he did. He said, pull your phone out, man. This is a great point that you're making. Pull your phone out real quick. Look at the reviews on this thing. I want to say it was like 4,000 or 40,000 or something crazy amount of reviews. And like if it was a 5-star system, it was probably 4.9. And I just go up and down the reviews with people talking about how it's just changed the game for them and how much they love this unit. And he said, let me ask you a question. Paraphrasing again, but it was something along the lines of, one, do you think all these people are wrong? And I'm like, well, no. I'm sure there are a lot of people happy with this unit. I know the name Traeger very well. I want to see what else is out there. And then he just I don't remember what all was said in between that and him getting to the complete money back guarantee. But he said, take the unit, get it set up, give it a shot, try it. If you don't fall in love with it, like I say, we will take it back for a 100% money back guarantee. And I was just like, you know me, I'm an easy sale. Not you listening, but like Jamie and Nate know. Like, you don't have to, he didn't have to do this much. He probably just needed to ask me one more time. But he went through all this. And it was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times I said no, thank you. And he just asked again. And then he hit me with this money back guarantee. And I know better. I know me. I'm never going to disassemble that thing and put it back in a box and drive it back to never. Nope. And I wouldn't let them come and take it out, right? The only way it's going back is if it doesn't work. I know me, but still.
And even then, you'll try to just bring you a new one. Like,
oh, absolutely. Do not make me do work on this thing. I'll be furious. I know it's never going back as long as it works. I own it forever. But I still said to myself, oh, well, yeah, they got the guarantee. So if I don't like it, if it's not the best one, yeah. He just didn't stop. He would have none of this, me backing out without even trying a thing. It just was ridiculous to him. And he pushed through and he pushed through and he pushed through. And now I almost set my house on fire with this Traeger grill because I used it about 40 times and never cleaned it. I wasn't listening that well.
Brian, I got a free Traeger from our buddy Logan, and doing some wings, I just about set the house on fire as well.
Oof,
so
didn't clean it either.
I'm sure that's what it was. But I remember running in and grabbing the fire extinguisher, and we had people over for a party. It was a whole thing. So
yeah, it did the same thing.
You're not alone in the smoker fire. So,
dude, they were prime ribeyes, and I was on the podcast. I don't remember who the guest was, but I said to Nate and the guest, like, all right, well, I talked to you guys all night, but I can smell the ribeyes coming up through my bedroom window where I'm recording. And I'm like, I'm dying here. I got to get down to these,
Oh, man.
And 10 minutes later, I smelled like some bad smoke. And I think I looked at my app and it sent me a text saying like they've reached temperature, but it was like early. I don't remember it. No, you know what? This was a ribeye roast. And all of a sudden I look at the temp and it's like 100 degrees hotter than it's supposed to be. I'm like, well, that's not right. And I go walking downstairs and the thing, flames are pouring out from under the thing. The roll of paper towel I keep under it's on fire. The pellets in the bag under it are smoking.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, you got to clean this thing? And like, I talked to Brennan the next day and he's like ripping me a new one. What's wrong with you, bro? Yeah. But the moral of the story is I can be a pretty intimidating presence. I'm a high D on the disc profile. I'm an A type. I'm pretty aggressive in most areas of my life, depending on who I'm with, and very outgoing and very outspoken. I'm somebody that if you're selling to me and I'm not buying wholeheartedly, I can be somewhat intimidating, but I'm not a threat to you at all. I'm not a real, genuine threat, but I'm someone that you might feel like that with. And this guy, he didn't look at that. He looked past that. He looked at someone who genuinely has a need or a desire for his product. And he just made it silly not to move forward with it as many times as it took. And this is most of your clients in the home. It really is most of your clients. You have not asked enough times to deserve the yes with that person. And if you'll leave your kid in the truck and be an emotional grown-up and understand that your needs get met every other Friday on payday, their needs get met in this home. You being intimidated, or you having your feelings hurt, or you being angry because they're treating me a certain way. Whatever it is, has no place in this call. If you're going to make money, if the client's going to be fully served, you just have to be a grown-up. And you got to be willing to push past their nonsense. And oftentimes is what their smokescreen objections are. My objection was a smokescreen that I had signed a contract with myself walking over there that I was going to do. When I really thought about it, it was like, why? Like, how is it serving me to now waste more time? I'm probably going to forget again because it'd been months we were supposed to get something, right? And it's just going to be like, whatever. Nothing's going to happen. It wasn't serving me to be like that. It's not serving your client to go get burned days, weeks, months off their lives getting other estimates that they may never get. You have to push through it. And Jamie, you're an expert at it, bro.
Well, I've been learning from the best.
Well, that's a great place to wrap it up for this episode, gentlemen. And we greatly appreciate you spending time with us, Jamie. I believe the evolution of our listeners has benefited from it. And obviously the evolution of you as a maturing salesperson and professional is quite evident in this podcast. So thank you for being a canvas to which Brian has lent his brushes many times, but also now becoming the painter yourself and sharing those same types of benefits to our listeners. We greatly appreciate that. If our listeners are interested in learning more about you or overcoming the objections such as you're doing or any of the things that you've been talking about on today's episode, is there a great place to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. Depending on how close you are with Brian, obviously reach out. He's got my number. I'm happy to talk and help with people here. But man, guys, plugging into the Waste No Day podcast, what these guys do is incredible. It's been a pretty big asset, for myself and a lot of guys that I work with. So I can't speak highly enough of what you guys do. Very thankful for it.
Appreciate that. And yes, I do see you in the Waste No Day Facebook group. So just a quick shout out to that. Thanks for being in there, and see you in the comment section every once in a while. So if you're looking for Jamie, you can find him in there. Otherwise, we can get you connected. But appreciate you spending the time with us, Jamie. Thanks so much for lending us a little bit of your evening.
Well, Nate, if I can just add one last thing here. I know we talk about how much I directly worked, with Brian in terms of the sales process, but something I think that it is easy to overlook, but, in terms of the impact that you have had, Nate, I'm pretty sure I've talked to you quite a bit about this, but I don't know that I've ever seen Nate get visibly mad or frustrated in the heat of a conversation. Maybe that's just because he's always right. I don't know.
Certainly not that, I assure you.
The amount of times that I've come to Nate pretty hot or aggravated, and he's just kept his cool and talked through whatever's going on is truly just such an inspiration in terms of even in the home with a client, right? When the client's going through something emotional and being willing to, just be that steady, cool, collected, it literally de-escalates things. And so obviously we talked a lot tonight about, the training and stuff that I've received with Brian in terms of the sales process. But man, you've been just as impactful with that as well, Nate. And so thankful for what you guys do and, the mentorship that I've gotten from you too. So
that's kind of you to say, Jamie, and a nice way to tie up the episode for us. That's a wrap for this one, and we hope that you've enjoyed your time with Jamie. We sure have. And man, did he bring some great content tonight in talking about just the ability to overcome objections, his evolution in doing so, and even now overcome the objections before they ever become objections. And I love his systemized process and how he's able to insert things. He is a student of sales, and he is a scientist of sales, is probably a good way of saying it, because he will absolutely take the scientific theory. He will apply a little bit here. He'll test it. He'll apply a little bit there. He'll test it. And he will keep refining that until he gets the experiment to work the way that he thinks it should. And he's always willing to try more. So I appreciate that about him. And I think you can hear it in his voice, how he continues to just add in little bits and pieces to his process to get even more output and better outcomes in his journey. So we appreciate that. Hope that you did as well. Share this episode around. I think it's a great universal episode. Obviously, he's coming from an electrical standpoint, but we talked so much universally about sales that this can really apply to anybody in the trades or in home services and sales in general. So we love that. Make sure you hit up Jamie too. Let him know that you appreciated it. And it's always good to have Jamie back on the podcast. We're going to leave you now with our weekly challenge, which continues to be the same: to choose to wake up each and every morning and waste no day.